Love them or hate them, tieflings have become one of the most popular character races in Dungeons & Dragons. Earlier this year, DiceScroller.com analyzed 1.2 million characters on D&D Beyond. In order of popularity, the 5e races people selected were as follows. In first place, Human with 260,000. Second place, Elf with 194,000. Third place was Half-Elf with 115,000. Fourth place was Dwarf with 89,000, and fifth place, Tiefling, also with 89,000. Actually, I would say the Dwarf and the Tiefling are tied for fourth place because the Dwarf only had a difference of 22 characters. Say what you will, but when a race is as popular as dwarves, something is going on. Why the hell are Tieflings so popular? Tieflings were somewhat rare in 2nd edition and 3rd edition. They were a part of a larger group of creatures called Plane-Touched. This is where we got things like Aasimar and Tiefling. The Aasimar were associated with celestial higher planes, and obviously the Tieflings were the Plane-Touched that had fiendish influence. 4th edition changed that all up. It made them a player's handbook race, and it gave them the look that they have now. It also gave them a whole new backstory. The Tiefling becoming a core race and getting an established place in the world is of course a factor in their popularity. 5th edition followed suit with them being a core race, and there are even a bunch of Tiefling sub-races / character options. I made a post on Reddit, also on Facebook and Discord, and I also ran a YouTube poll, and I consulted with friends, and I just did some research and some pondering, all in the hopes of getting to the heart of this question. I got a bunch of different answers from people, all of which added to the explanation, and I'll get into those answers here shortly. Like most things in D&D, I have my criticisms of the Tiefling. There are things about it that I think are wonky or lacking, and there are things about it that I think are done well. And the sheer fact that Wizards of the Coast has managed to create a creature that is so successful is impressive. I know that Wizards of the Coast has their faults, but you try to create something successful. Just try it. See how easy it is. It's really hard to come up with an idea that's good and be successful with it. But as far as my criticisms go, where do I start? Let's start with the tail. Can the Tieflings do anything with their tails? There's no racial trait, there's no description, there's no feat, there's nothing that makes any mention of a purpose for their tails. And tails definitely have purposes, such as balancing the weights of body parts, or balancing in the sense of balancing along a narrow surface, or enhancing maneuverability while running, or prehensile tails that can grasp things, or tails that can be used as natural weapons. Tiefling tails are described as usually being thick, so we should find some counterbalance to that, such as the Tiefling being top-heavy with big upper torsos, or big heads with powerful jaws, or a posture that leans or hunches forward. Nope, they're just regular human bodies with fully upright bipedal postures. In that case, the thick tail would be throwing them off balance backward. Plus, wouldn't it be hard to sit with a big tail like that getting in the way? Does it just connect to their lower back? Does it cause spinal issues? Does it overtake parts of the buttocks or cause the positioning of the anus to be shifted? And look how easy it would be for an opponent standing behind the Tiefling to strike the tail, since it juts out so far. It would just get sliced up or chopped off or crushed by giant monsters. And why do Tieflings have no tail attack? They also have no attack with their horns, which is one of the main reasons for having horns. Many Tieflings are also shown as having fangs and claws, but they don't have those natural weapons either. This line of questioning ties into a much bigger issue with the race. Why does the diabolic curse only affect their appearance? Wouldn't Asmodeus, or whatever other archdevil, rather the curse affect their behavior and personality, which would thus serve toward accomplishing said archdevil's own agenda? That's what devils do. They have schemes and goals and machinations. They're lawful evil, not petty evil. Artistically speaking, appearances represent something. The aesthetic of something is symbolic of its essence. The image expresses the spirit of the subject. So why would tieflings look like devils and monsters, but be nothing other than ordinary people? Now, sometimes an appearance can be misleading. It can even be a trick. But those are exceptions, and the tieflings are not using their devil appearance to trick people. It is exactly what we see: infernal lineage and a diabolic curse. The lore says the tieflings' appearance and their nature are not their fault, but rather the result of an ancient sin, for which they and their children and their children's children will always be held accountable. What was this terrible sin? What happened that brought this curse upon their bloodline? For this answer, we must turn to the player's hashbong. No, it isn't in there. We must turn to YOLO's Guide to Mobsters. Wait, no, it's not in there either. We must turn to Morgan Freeman's Foam of Toes. No, damn it, it's not in there either. No, it's not in 5e. No, we actually must turn back to the 4th edition's player's hashbong, which gave us the current tiefling as we know it. It reads, "Hundreds of years ago, the leaders of the human empire Baal Taroth made pacts with devils to solidify their hold over its enormous territory. Those humans became the first tieflings, and they governed their empire in the name of their infernal masters. In time, Baal Taroth came into conflict with Arcosia, the ancient empire of the Dragonborn, and decades of warfare left both empires in ruins. Baal Taroth's grand capital was thrown down in ruin. Tieflings are the heirs of the surviving noble dynasties that ruled the empire. Their bloodline is tainted by their diabolic connections, passing to their descendants through all generations. In many ways, they are human. They can have children with humans, for example, but their offspring are always tieflings. Centuries of other races' distrust and outright hatred have made tieflings self-reliant and often too willing to live up to the stereotypes imposed on them. As a race without a homeland, tieflings know that they have to make their own way in the world, and that they have to be strong to survive. And they are not quick to trust anyone who claims to be a friend. However, when a tiefling's companions demonstrate that they trust him or her, the tiefling quickly learns to extend the same trust to them. And once a tiefling gives someone trust and loyalty, the tiefling is a firm friend and ally for life. Now, this lore is tied to the Nintir Vale setting of 4e, aka the Points of Light setting, the setting that both was and wasn't an official setting. I talk about this peculiarity in my Raven Queen video if you're curious to know more about it. There wasn't a Baal Taroth tiefling empire in the Forgotten Realms, for example, so how were the creators able to get the modern rendition of the tiefling into the Forgotten Realms? The classic tiefling was there in 2nd and 3rd edition, to a limited degree. The original take on the tieflings was that they were the kind of plain-touched creature. They had the outsider creature type, not humanoid, and they were descended from fiends, demons, devils, Yugoloths, etc., who had bred with humans. Also, the appearance of the classic tiefling was more varied. Some of them almost look like satyrs, for example. In order to get the rebooted modern tiefling to jive with the Forgotten Realms, we get the following explanation. Hold on to your pantaloons, boys and girls, and get ready for this riveting display of masterclass story crafting. In 1358 DR, a warlock coven known as the Toriel 13 performed a ritual that cursed most tiefling lineages, those of demons, devils, hags, and rakshasas, among others, with the blood of Asmodeus, changing their original lineage with that of the archdevil himself. This was done to make Asmodeus a racial god, ensuring him enough followers to attain godly powers. After the spell plague of 1385 DR, when Asmodeus became a god, the magic of the ritual took effect across all of Toriel, and afterwards, most tieflings living in the 15th century DR were of the Asmodean lineage, all having a similar devilish appearance. In other words, the classic plain-touch tiefling became the modern tiefling because magic. Bullshit! You know, something catches my attention with this. The 5e player's hashbong states that tieflings, on the inside, are just regular people. They're humans like you and I, just with a devilish appearance. They're victims of a curse out of their control, unfairly hated on because of it, though this curse is only superficial. But this contradicts the Forgotten Realms lore stating that tieflings were cursed with Asmodeus's blood by warlocks, and they were ensured to be his followers. So which is it? Are tieflings only superficially related to devils, or do they have Asmodeus's blood in their veins and function to advance his evil schemes? Like so many things in D&D, the tiefling lore is incoherent and inconsistent in many places. Either way you go, you have problems. If their curse is only superficial, then the race is shallow, essentially a cheap gimmick. If their curse puts Asmodeus's blood in them and binds them as his followers, then people have to deal with the race actually being evil and cannot take the victim position. And both of these sides still have the jank of the anatomical features such as tails and horns that do nothing. If you are someone who is fascinated with the idea of playing characters who are monstrous and exotic, check out my upcoming 5e book, Monstrous Heroes. Pre-ordering is still available, and the book is estimated to launch in Q2 2024. It features 17 different monster classes, from very monstrous things like dragon, aberration, and oni, to more human-like things like lycanthrope, hag, minotaur, vampire. It also has a fiend race class called the Nefarics, which are raven-winged, grim souls who tap into either devilish or demonic powers. The link to take a look at Monstrous Heroes is down in the video description. My Reddit post got some pretty good traction. It was entitled, "Why Have Tieflings Become So Popular?" The top comment said, "They're technicolor half-demons with built-in angst and plot hooks due to their ties to the Hells. They're different enough from conventional fantasy races that they're interesting without being so different that they alienate newcomers. They pretty much sell themselves." Another person made a good point. Drow used to be the cool, edgy race, but due to sunlight sensitivity and the race's bad rep, they ain't as playable. Tieflings don't have these cons, plus they get cool horns. Also, people horny for demons being a thing. These points were restated and added onto by this person. They are edgy, unique looking, and their story is relatable to a lot of marginalized communities. A lot more people from those communities, myself included, joined D&D during 5e and flocked to tieflings. Many other people made comments about finding the tiefling sexy. Some people also pointed out how the tiefling, mechanically speaking, is a strong race due to their fire resistance and great innate spells and bonus to charisma, in an edition in which 3 full spellcasters and 1 half-caster use charisma as the spellcasting ability. Dragonborn also get damage resistance and a bonus to charisma, but their breath weapon is underwhelming, and they don't have dark vision like tieflings do. Plus, the Dragonborn are less human and less relatable on a personal level for some players. In fact, this theme of tieflings being relatable kept popping up a lot. People continually talked about how they could relate to the tiefling being an outcast, or a target for prejudice, and a tragic soul who is victimized by society due to something out of their control. Some people take this in a universal sense, and some people take it in the sense of relating to their sexual orientation or ethnicity, especially the sexual orientation front. One commenter said enthusiastically, "They're hella gay, and that's dope." More explicitly, they're a race that are different from the societal norm, and in many ways the world looks down on them for no fault of their own. That's something a lot of the log boutiquia / queer folk identify with, so have adopted them as their own. I had never realized that. Tiefling is the go-to race for log boutique individuals. Now, I personally have not seen a ton of Tiefling player characters in my games. Definitely some, yes, some, that's for sure, but I would not have pegged them as the tied for 4th most popular race in D&D, neck and neck with dwarves. As a GM, I've used Tieflings a lot, usually as villains, as I played a lot of 4e back when it was current, and that lore stuck with me. 5e has taken many steps away from races on the whole being evil and bad guys, and it wants things to be much more broad and varied. Orcs, drow, gnolls, heck, even mind flayers and beholders now are supposed to be calming down from their harshness and their associations with certain sensitive real-world topics. I see the potential for creating new stories, and new world building that showcases the orcs or drow or whatever else who break the mold. But the problem is that if you go too far with watering down the monsters, it hurts the storytelling. Because if you want your stories to be gripping, to be great stories, they need conflicts. They need things that unsettle and scare us. They need flawed characters and powerfully wicked villains. And along with this is the fact that if you continually shelter people from topics that make them uncomfortable, they don't grow. They don't strengthen. They remain in their comfort zones and their bunkers. If you want any kind of meaningful development, you have to go outside the comfort zone. You have to choose to face the scary things that you've been avoiding. This should be obvious to us RPG players. You have to go into the dungeon and face the monsters if you want to get the treasure and level up. There are dangers and threats and terrifying things in the dungeon. You don't know what's going to happen down in that dark, chaotic place. That's what makes it an adventure. If there's no danger, there's no adventure. Speaking of facing things that make you uncertain and uncomfortable, I don't know how exactly I'm going to tackle this next point about the tiefling. Well, many people kept mentioning how the tiefling is seen as sexy, alluring, erotic, and following the suggestions of certain comments, I dared to search and glimpse into the world of tiefling adult content. By the divine, there's a lot of it. A lot. What is going on here, you sick, sick puppies? Well, if I think about it for a moment, it actually does make sense. Lust is classically one of the 7 deadly sins. It's actually considered the least bad of the deadly sins. Like in the Divine Comedy, Dante comes across fornicators and adulterers in hell before he descends down into the lower circles where things get much more nightmarish. Yes, the lustful souls are in torment in hell, but their punishments are not the worst of the worst. Pride is actually the worst of the 7 deadly sins. Pride is the original sin, and the sin that all the others derive from. Anyway, the connection is crystal clear now. Tiefling, devilish, lusty. The figure of the sexy devil is prominent in society, and many brands of adult products and adult content play into themes of lust, temptation, sin, naughtiness. Now, some people might argue that associating sexuality with a notion like sin is a silly, old, outdated superstition. But I find that line of reasoning to be shallow and actually immature, because if you have ever been cheated on, betrayed by someone you loved, someone who you trusted, the pain and the shattering of reality that you endure is so terrible that you cannot even properly describe it without using religious or mythical language. It's like a pit to hell opens up beneath you and swallows you whole. And some people never recover from that. Their suffering lasts forever. None of these terrors change the fact that, as lots of people have stated, we are captivated by the sex appeal of tieflings. The taboo, the forbidden, the walk on the dark side. These things are attractive to us. As much as people are scared of danger, we are also attracted to it. We're complicated, okay? So the official tiefling lore might not make sense, but this world of fan-driven eroticism makes total sense. I'm not encouraging it. I'm not saying, hey, go dive into it. I'm not saying it doesn't bring with it other kinds of problems, but I am saying that it makes sense. I can easily understand it. My YouTube poll also had a pretty good response. I posed it using some of the main responses I was getting on Reddit and Facebook. It said, why is tiefling such a popular race in D&D? Pick which reason strikes you the most. They are edgy/hardcore. They are exotic and fantastical while also being human-like and relatable. They have really good racial traits and character options. They appeal to log boutique or people that feel they don't fit in. They are attractive/sexy. The top response, receiving nearly half of all the votes, was that tieflings are exotic and fantastical while also being human-like and relatable. Tied for second place, with 17% of the votes each, were the answers that tieflings are edgy/hardcore, and that tieflings appeal to log boutique or people that feel that they don't fit in. 11% said it's because tieflings are attractive/sexy, and surprisingly, only 7% think the main reason for tiefling popularity is because they have really good racial traits and character options. A number of commenters on the poll said that they did see a combination of all the options factoring in, though that was the point of the poll. These are all factors in tieflings' popularity, and I was interested to see which of the factors appealed to people the most. And even though I've used tieflings a lot as a GM, I've never played one across all the many characters I've had as a player. The sexiness factor is the least interesting to me personally, but I can definitely relate to the edginess, to the mixture of exotic yet relatable on a human level, the potent racial traits, and definitely the role of being someone who feels like they don't fit in. That is something that I have actually dealt with my entire life, being an artist, and in many situations, a weirdo. I could definitely see myself playing a tiefling that has a major inner conflict and a painful yet transformative character arc. Let's see, hopefully I can play one. As with the video I did trying to figure out why there are so many elf subraces, I consulted with some close personal friends on this topic, and that same good friend of mine gave me an interesting answer. The short, hot take version of his answer is, tieflings are popular because of daddy issues. The more in-depth version is that tiefling is part of a collective psychological theme that involves evil parents. There's a common archetype of the dark father or dark mother, aka evil king or evil queen, aka tyrannical father or devouring mother. We see it all over the place in myths, folklore, movies, games, literature, etc. As an archetype, it is cross-cultural and timeless. The tiefling fills the role of being the child of the evil parent, especially the figure of the evil father, as we think of some corrupt king and his counselors making a pact with devils in order to gain more dominance, at the cost of sinking into an even deeper layer of corruption. My friend pointed out how the rate at which people have issues with their parents has climbed substantially in recent decades, and as so many have stated, they feel a sense of relatability with the tiefling. They identify with the character who has been betrayed or cursed or abandoned by their corrupt father. The character is some kind of outcast, shunned by the status quo of society, yet able to tap into a seductive world of pleasures and rebelliousness. So there you have it, my brave companions, a working theory as to why tieflings are so popular. Tieflings embody the trope of the child of an evil parent. Some people have deep problems with their parents, especially their father. Tieflings embody the seductiveness of the dark side. All people are tempted by the forbidden and the dangerous to some degree. Also, young people have raging hormones. Tieflings contain role-playing hooks as outcasts and underdogs. Many D&D players are some variety of misfit or geek. Tieflings are one of the edgiest D&D character races, and some players enjoy playing a character that is edgy in a blatant way. Tieflings have a novelty factor of being exotic and any color of the rainbow, yet they are still very human. We all play D&D to experience strange and different things, while at the same time connecting to our human condition. One thing I love about RPGs is the ability to explore dark things, even evil or quasi-evil characters, and to learn from those things, to peer into the abyss and have it peer back into you. We venture into the shadows. We even become monsters at times, so that we can learn what these things mean and what we can do to avoid becoming truly monstrous in our real lives. I want to say a very special thank you to my supporters on Patreon, in particular these esteemed benefactors, Adam Wood, Vince Vallely, Nick Thy Pirate King, Locke Monroe, and Nicholas A. I hope you all enjoyed this romp through the phenomenon that is the tiefling. Until we meet again, my brave companions, if you take a trip down the shadowy path, just make sure not to lose sight of the light, lest you become lost in the gloom. And as always, may your adventures be many.